Hello and welcome back to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend and yours, Mr. David Sparks.
Hey, Stephen. It's a day before WWDC as the show goes out. Are you excited?
I am excited. It comes around every year. It's a week later this year, which I was telling somebody that has ruined my internal clock. Like I totally skipped over the last week of May, thinking WWDC was several days ago. It's been a mess. But yes, very excited to see what Apple has in store in just a few hours, really, from when this comes out.
Christmas for nerds.
It is, yes.
I have an announcement.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, OmniFocus 4 Field Guide lives. Hooray! I've been working on this one for since January, and I got it done. It's out. OmniFocus 4. They came out the fourth edition. I've got a field guide for that. I've done one for each version of OmniFocus. It continues to be my task manager of choice. I think it's super powerful, but there is some stuff to learn about this app, and it was really fun making it. And we'll talk about it more during the show.
Yes, congratulations. It's always a momentous day when you get a field guide out. So
yes, it is. It sure is for me, if nobody else.
Yeah,
yes.
No, it's awesome. So yes, we will get to that a little bit later in the show. Today on More Power Users, which is the ad-free, longer version of the podcast. We do one of these each and every week. We're going to be putting in some last-minute predictions for WWDC, mostly around AI. I think that's going to be the theme of this year's conference, and we'll see how that goes. Unlike some other podcasts that will remain nameless, there's no silly points or games or rules.
Yeah,
we're just going to talk
draft.
Yeah. What's a draft? Come on. No, I'm just kidding. We love everybody. I mean, my other podcast has the most complicated rules ever invented on a podcast. So it's nice just to talk as friendly people and not as competitors. But we're going to put some last minute predictions down, and we'll see how those go. I guess a little housekeeping looking forward. This week of WWDC, we're going to be recording on Thursday and hope to have that episode out a few days earlier than Sunday so we can talk about all the news. And then after that, we're going to be using the betas. I have test devices ready to go. So I've got my secondary beta iPhone. I've got a MacBook Air that I'm going to sacrifice to the new version of macOS. So we will be running the beta so you don't have to, and we'll report in on those in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, my beta devices are not backups, though. They're just my devices. So
yeah, no, you just
let's see
dive
how
right
that
in.
goes.
Why not? Dear listener, I can't tell you how many times that David and I have been at a WWDC over the years. And unfortunately, we're not going to see each other this year, but many, many times over the years that we've known each other, you just come into the restaurant or, you're sitting in a hotel lobby and some of us come in and you're like, hey, look at this thing I put on my watch. And you touch your watch and it's hot, but look at this new feature, and you're always there on day one. So it'll be very exciting to talk about that.
You're supposed to grow out of that. You're supposed to get more mature and understand that putting beta software is a bad idea, but I just never did. So there you go.
You're all, I can always count on you to be there. So yeah, we will get into all of that in a couple of weeks. Always an exciting time to see what Apple's been up to.
One thing before we go, though, I just have to mention, how on Connected you guys do this thing with all the rules and everything. I have a confession. I skip the whole reading of the rules thing. It brings back flashbacks. As a lawyer, I did multi-million-dollar contracts that were less complicated than your rules.
That's why they're their own chapter. So you can just skip right over the rules and get to the game. Totally understandable.
All right. So feedback, more on iMessage.
Yeah.
We heard from one listener, Anonymous. When it comes to Apple's own tech support, AppleCare, almost 50% of all chats they handle, which gets close to 80 million contacts a year globally, are coming through iMessage. Wow. Impressive.
Wow. Yeah. So AppleCare also has a web tool, which I've used before, where you can chat with an agent and they can help you with an issue or get an appointment set up for you or whatever it is. But yeah, almost 50% coming through iMessage, according to this anonymous feedback. that's incredible. That's a really high number.
Yeah.
But also 80 million contacts a year. Woo! That's
Yeah.
a lot of people needing help.
Yeah. Wow. And probably when you think about it, that's a lot of data about what needs help. Like, right,
Yeah.
once you know what people are writing in about, then hopefully you can do a better job of beating it to the punch. And then Anonymous continues, I realize that's only Apple themselves, but as you can imagine, the average user who contact Apple Care isn't very technically inclined, so I'd imagine it gets used a lot for other businesses that offer it too. I hope so. I don't know. Anybody out there using that plan we talked about during the iMessage show, let us know. I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, me too. I think our experiences have been basically limited to Apple. I don't know if I've used it with other companies, but I would like to. I really like that it's just in the Messages app because I've had the experience even talking with Apple where like you accidentally close the wrong browser window, right? It's like, well, that's gone,
Yeah.
and Apple and others, they have ways to like try to restart a conversation. The history loads in, so because you're not going to get the same person. It being an iMessage just feels like much harder to mess up in a way as a user, and I like that.
So when we knew we were doing a show on messages, I knew we were going to miss things, right? I feel like that was inevitable. We do tons of research. I find every resource I can. We spend weeks on the outline, but guess what? We missed a few. And Kyle pointed out in the forums, instead of long pressing on a message to give you the option for a quick tap back reply, as well as a more advanced menu to reply and sticker, there are a couple easier ways to get more of the same features. You can also double tap to bring up the tap back replies. I didn't know that, and I never thought to look. And you can also swipe instead of long press.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Messages has a lot of those interactions, and I think that's good. Some people are more comfortable swiping as opposed to long pressing, and so those things are all good. I think we mentioned it in the show, but I want to mention it again because it just continues to stick out to me that forwarding a message is on iOS and iPadOS under like a separate place than some of these other actions. It's under more, and it's the only thing in there. I would like to see Apple streamline those things a little bit. And there are rumors that they're going to be more messages features, at WWDC, maybe some AI summarization, or having additional like effects and things. I think there's an opportunity here for Apple to kind of straighten up some of those features in iMessage, and I hope that they do. Another one, and forgive me, Dave, it's not in the outline, but someone had emailed it to me, is that there's also a feature if you're in a group chat where if you're behind, you can like tap to like go back to where you were. But in my experience, at least, and I'm in a couple of like very chatty group threads. I won't say with who, but one of them is definitely with my connected co-hosts. They that feature seems kind of hit or miss for me. Like I don't always understand when I'm going to get it or when it's not going to show up. So I would also like to see Apple do some better tooling around. Okay, you're in a group thread, you're trying to catch up. Like give me some better options for that. Maybe it is I can tap a button and Siri can summarize things for me. But I think there's also some work they could do there.
Yeah. And I feel like every year there's new features for messages because, like we talked about in the show, it's probably the most used application. I'm sure it has a permanent team. And I think Apple appreciates that, that messages lock in helps them keep people on the platform. So it seems like every year we're going to get something new for messages. I'd be surprised if we didn't.
Yeah, it's really important to their ecosystem.
On search, Dick wrote in, there's one feature I feel is missing from iMessage, which is the search feature. It's very difficult to find particular messages because it could be in a number of threads. Search for a message containing a particular word or person that searched all threads would be useful. Also, searching by date, range, or location of a photo would also be helpful.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
It is. Search in messages, I sort of feel like is like search in mail. Like it kind of works. And every couple of years, Apple's like, hey, we made it better. But
Yeah.
especially on the Mac, for some reason, where I'm most likely, I feel like just I'm at my Mac all day. I feel like search and messages is really slow. Like I understand, I've got hundreds of thousands of messages in here, but I have an M2 Pro and all this stuff is synced on my computer and I got fast SSD. Like that should be more performant. So in addition to these features, I think Dick is right that they should add. I also just want it to be better performing. If I'm searching for something, it should be much faster than it is.
Yeah. After I read the feedback, I went and played with search, and I agree with Dick. And I'd actually say that I think search on messages is worse than mail.
Yeah.
I find mail has actually got better over the years, but search on messages might be the thing that doesn't get the attention it deserves.
Mm-hmm.
I thought while we were talking about search, I want to do a quick sidebar on it because search is on my mind a lot lately. We talked about Perplexity, and I continue to be very impressed with that application. And it has me thinking about search. Then Microsoft has Recall that they've got announced with these new laptops they've got coming out there, ARM-based laptops, where it's going to, as I understand it, it's going to take a screenshot of everything on your screen every X number of seconds.
Yeah.
And then it's going to keep all of that, and then it's going to use AI to search it out. So if you can say, well, when did I talk to Steven about, Apple Care? And then it'll go find it and search it out through those screenshots. There is some news stories now questioning the security of that.
Yeah.
Because if somebody got into that. Well, I think that was obvious from the beginning. If that stuff gets exposed to a hacker, they're going to know everything. They're going to know your passwords. They're just going to know everything about you. So obviously a feature like this has to be super secure, but at the same time, if you could do it securely, it is an impressive search engine that can basically find anything you've ever done on your computer. How's Apple doing on search generally? We just kind of took some shots at them over messages, but I thought I'd just kind of go through and do a quick check-in with you. And starting with Spotlight, that is, of course, about search. It's in the name.
Yeah. And it was sort of their first branded search feature back in OS 10 Tiger, I think. Yeah, so I use Alfred, but Alfred sits atop the Spotlight database on the Mac. And I feel like it does a good enough job for what I need. Now, using Alfred, I also have a bunch of other features in there, so it's like kind of hard to separate them. But I think it's very rare that I go to search for something on my Mac and I can't find it, either by file name or something in the file itself. And if I need something more custom, I do use Finder Search a good bit, right? Or if I'm just in my documents folder, and it's like I need all the, I need all the text files out of these multiple folders, and they're all in subfolders. Like I feel like that works pretty well, and I like all of the. We talked about it forever ago in our Finder episode, but all the search parameters I can use there.
Yeah. The tokens. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Whereas like, okay, I want this sort of file type or in this date range. I feel like all that's pretty good, and I feel like it's kept up with the performance increases of the Mac, maybe unlike messages. But what do you think?
I would agree. I can't think of the number of times, especially when I was a lawyer, I would search for like a Microsoft Word document containing the word rule against perpetuities or something silly. And like it would find it. It would find the needle in the haystack. I think Spotlight is more accessible to everybody. I think of people like my wife, who is not a nerd. She can open Spotlight and find things generally on her Mac. I think the Finder Search still is a power user feature. So I feel like there's an opportunity for AI search to improve, like where normal people. I was thinking about AI. One thing about AI is it democratizes search if it's done right, where anybody can find anything. You don't have to be a power user. So I would like to see Finder Search get a little more friendly for people who don't listen to Mac power users. I mean, the family here listening to the show, we know how to use tokens. We can really dig in. But I think for a lot of people, if you said go find that one Word document on your computer, they would be completely lost. So I think that could improve. The other thing I think could improve is the stuff we were just talking about, the app specific search stuff. Photos has definitely improved over time, and I do think there is an element of AI involved there. Calendar and mail are okay. I think they could add more features, like finding an email from Steven about a certain subject. It's possible, but again, I think it's because I know all the tricks.
Yeah.
Something I really like is, I'm going to stop banging on about this. I think I brought it up 3 times on the show, is like searching notes. I feel like they've got a search feature in Apple Notes, but I feel like that Alfred plugin that we keep talking about is so much better.
Yeah, it is.
And I know that you can search notes through Spotlight, but I was trying and you just don't get the same results, and you can't like customize it to just find a folder. Like, I would like to see Spotlight get more powerful tools into the Apple applications. I think that's something that could improve. But this whole thing with recall has me thinking about it, and I have to admit, I am envious of that feature. I wish that Apple could find a way to do it. I hope that they're looking at it closely, and if they could securely find a way to give us that global search, I think that would be a nice feature.
I think so too. I stand by what I think I said in the more power users section. We talked about this, the security stuff that now Microsoft is facing. Apple doesn't want to face that, and I think that's they got to sort that out. But these devices know so much about us, and that they should be more useful when it comes to finding things later. And so I am hopeful that will come, but we'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully they've got like a project going on with that. Like, just like they have the secure enclave for your fingerprint, maybe, using their own silicon, they could figure out a way to put a feature like recall in, a segmented section of memory. I don't know. I just feel like there's a way around this if they put the effort in.
I think so too. And the sort of the one of the things AI, these LLMs are good at is finding the needle in the haystack, and maybe they can apply some of that goodness across these apps. But we'll see. I think it's an important thing, but I don't think it's an exciting thing, right? When you're talking about like features coming to these platforms that are powered by machine learning or AI or whatever, like better search, because it's not that exciting. Sometimes I feel like kind of gets left behind, but I don't think it should, because this is an important thing.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts on that. We're going to talk about that in more power users, but the short version is I think people are overthinking this whole AI thing, but we'll get to that.
This episode of MPU is made possible by 1Password. You probably know 1Password as the solution for keeping your passwords, secure notes, bank account information, driver's license information, credit cards, all of that important secure stuff, keeping it safely stored across all of your devices. Because 1Password works on the Mac and the PC and iPhones and iPads and Android phones. Everywhere you are, you can access your stuff with 1Password. And the team behind 1Password is always on top of new technology. So of course it works like with things like Touch ID and Face ID. But I was checking out the 1Password blog the other day, and they have this blog post up about the ChatGPT desktop application and how certain design elements in that app they have to account for with 1Password. So they have this new check for the ChatGPT macOS app to make sure that users are using the correct workspace when logged into the app. This is awesome. The folks over there are paying attention to what's happening in the industry and making sure that your passwords and everything you need to use is ready to go. One of my favorite features is the ability to create and store banking information. I do a lot of wire payments, and you got to make sure that you have the right account and routing number and all that junk. And I just have it all in 1Password, so I have it with me wherever I go. So if a sponsor needs it or we have an issue with an invoice at work, I can know that my stuff is safe and sound in 1Password. I use it at work, I use it at home, and I recommend you check it out. Head on over to onepassword.com/MPU to learn more and to sign up for a free 30-day trial. That's 1password.com/MPU. And after that 30-day trial, you'll get 20% off. So go check it out, 1password.com/MPU. Our thanks to 1Password for their long-standing support of the show and keeping our stuff safe and secure.
Okay, so more feedback. Keyboard shortcuts and menus. Dustin wrote it on the MPU forum. I recommended an app called Paletro, which I still love. It finds all of the menu bar, or it finds all the menu settings. So you just type something in, it finds it for you, taps it in. It's very quick. But Dustin had some options. He said, if you don't want to do that, if you want to keep it in-house, use existing tools. There's an Alfred workflow that searches the menu bar, and that's cool. Also, there's a Homebrew, an app called Homebrew 2, which is more developer focused, but basically assigns a keyboard shortcut to every clickable item in the current app. Obviously dependent on the app, but it helps keep my hands on the keyboard for sure. Yeah, or just get Paletro. Because I have a set app subscription, I guess the barrier of entry is very low for me.
Yeah.
I looked at this Alfred workflow. It looks like a good one. I will say that as a power user, having a keyboard shortcut that can fire off any menu item in any application at any time, you'll find quick use for that.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great way to kind of filter out what menu bar items are important to you. And then we realize, like, oh gosh, I'm selecting this one 14 times a day. Then go into system settings, into keyboard, and set up a custom keyboard shortcut for that menu bar item. So I think a really common one is a ton of macOS apps can print to PDF, and usually that's in the menu bar, but it doesn't always have a keyboard shortcut. And so I think Mail used to not have one, and now they do. I use MindStream now. I can't remember, but I know for a long time I had a custom one for Mail to do that, because I turn emails into PDFs for like receipt documentation, like all the time for work. And using the mouse would slow me down. Using an app like one of these is faster. Setting your own custom keyboard shortcut is the fastest.
Yeah, there's something going on with the Mail team where I think it might be personal where they're coming for me, because the print to PDF command has, depending on which year you go, they add an ellipses afterwards, or they don't.
Yep.
And so I made a shortcut a long time ago, or an automation that I shared. I don't know, this is probably 10 or 15 years ago now, about you hit Command P twice. You just hold down the Command key and hit P twice, and it saves to email. And there's a bunch of people listening who rely on it. And every year I have to update it, because it's like they just change it. They're like, oh, let's take the ellipses off. Yeah. So Sparky has to make a new video. I honestly don't know, because they go back and forth. It's like they can't make up their mind or something.
Yeah, that always cracks me up, because I have definitely been in that situation where, like, you have a blog post and it's got some Google juice behind it maybe, and then the thing changes. Like years and years ago, I wrote one. I think it was OS X Mavericks. There was some version of macOS where the Mail app and Gmail didn't get along very well. Yeah. It worked, but it was buggy, and there were some things you could do to like make it better. And that blog post just did gangbuster traffic for years. But then at some point, some of the advice I gave in that blog post was actually wrong, because they had fixed the issue, and I had to like go in and be like, "This is an old blog post. Please don't, don't replicate this, after this point, because it can cause you trouble."
Well, that's one thing we'll get to learn tomorrow, is what's the new print to PDF, ellipses or no ellipses. Gennett wrote in about Apple Notes. I wanted to take a lot of notes and lock them, but there are many kinds of notes that cannot be locked. And he gave us a screenshot. I didn't realize this, but there are a lot of kinds of notes that can't be locked. If it has video, audio, tags, the tags ones is what gets me, PDF or file attachments, or using features from a newer version of Notes can't be locked.
Yep, Notes with tags can't be locked.
Well, that can throw a real wrench in the monkey works if you've got a tag-based note system and you want to lock things. Either way, thanks, Gennett, for sending that in. I didn't realize how big that is. Hopefully that's something that gets fixed here soon.
Yeah, I wonder if with the tags specifically, because they have the tag show up in the sidebar, maybe can't count them, whatever. But I think I think you should be able to lock any note. Clearly, that's an important feature. So hopefully that gets resolved.
Yeah. We got a note from listener Jason, and this is a note we get like every year or two. People write in asking for advice on this problem. He says, I want to interview my parents about their lives. What do you recommend for a tech setup for that? And first I would say is, if you can do that, I recommend it. Both my parents are gone. I wish I had done it back when they were alive. It was harder than it is now. And if you go in years past, the advice we gave was pretty complicated. And when this question came in, I got thinking, well, how would I deal with that today? And I think it's a lot easier now. And I wrote them back already. But what I said was, first of all, don't just interview them with recording. He wanted to record their voices. I said, for goodness sake, just set up an iPhone on a tripod, get video, so the grandkids or whoever someday can hopefully watch it. You get really good video out of an iPhone now, so that's good. But the audio question, I was looking at options, and I think what I would do, and this is what he ended up doing to success, was I would just order a set of DJI wireless mics. Now, there's the Rode Wireless and the DJI. They're both really good. I recommend DJI because I own them and I know they work. But they have a little USB home unit on them. It's very small. It plugs into the bottom of your iPhone. And then the mics themselves are just little magnet or clip-on things that you can stick on the shirts of the people you're interviewing. The nice thing about the DJI set is it comes with 2 mics, and they just came out with the new version, the wireless mic 2. And you can just put that on your mom and dad and have them start talking. You're going to get great audio. And if you just put your phone on a tripod, you're good to go. But I do think the audio is important. I think it's worth spending the money to get some sort of microphone set up.
I think so too. Yeah, this is much simpler than it used to be. And these things you can use with the iPhone. So you're not even like syncing audio and video later.
Yeah.
And this actually, I'm glad this feedback came in because this has been something that's been on the back of my mind, do with my folks. And now this has like prompted me to pursue this more seriously with them. They've kind of rebuffed me so far, but no longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, my dad grew up in Missouri. He rode a horse to school and he carried a firearm because he would shoot dinner on the way home. I mean, his life was so different than mine. And I wish I had got that in his words. I tell my kids the stories that he shared with me, but I never got them, on audio or video. Just such a different life he had. And by the way, these wireless mics, just in general, as an aside, are so awesome now. It's got so easy. And the Rode and the DJI are the ones. I think there's a lot of third-party ones out there, but those are the 2 companies that are kind of at the top of the game here.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get a set of these things, I got them for recording video for labs and stuff, but I use them when we go to Disneyland. I use them sometimes for family events. It's just, there's so many good uses for these microphones, and they work like 150 feet away. We had a family gathering, and I stuck one on a kid who was riding his bike and just took video of him and watching him like talk to himself as he was riding around. It was hilarious. And so, yeah, there's lots of good stuff out there you can do with one of these mics if you get one.
Yeah.
So there is the pointless, expensive money that you get from Max Sparky every week. Actually, I may have another one coming up in the outline.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know it's coming. We also got some feedback on our episode on the Arc browser, and I'm sure there'll be additional feedback. Sometimes the most recent episode hasn't been out long enough when we do one of these. I will say, like, I had so much fun working on that episode, and it was highly requested, and I think people have enjoyed it. Dan wrote in, when I was speaking about profiles and spaces, I said this is a complicated thing to talk about, and then Dan basically simplified it for us, and so I'm gonna read what Dan wrote. Dan argues that profiles in Arc are the same as Google Chrome, but what's unique is spaces. So a profile can have multiple spaces associated with it. And I think the way I kind of view this is mail signatures and mail accounts in mail, where you can have signatures and you can apply them to different accounts. A profile can have multiple spaces, and those spaces, as was also brought up in the forums, those spaces are what's really convenient because they can have individual logins. And so you can have multiple, Google accounts or Microsoft 365 accounts, multiple Amazon accounts, and keep them entirely separate using these features. And so it's a great feature. It is still, I think, kind of hard to talk about, but very useful, and something where I feel like Safari has been a little bit behind on.
Yeah. I'll be very curious to see if Safari gets some Arc-like features added to it. It seems like that would be the obvious place to go to kind of up the game a bit, and we'll find out soon.
We will.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by NetSuite, the leading integrated cloud business software suite. Go to netsuite.com/MPU. Quick math: the less your business spends on operations, multiple systems, and delivering your products or services, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required, accessed from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. So often for a business, the difference between success and failure is in the systems, and NetSuite gives you a thorough system to run the whole widget. It's important to find ways to cut costs and boost business performance, and NetSuite is just that solution. By popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/MPU. That's netsuite.com/MPU for that one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. And our thanks to NetSuite for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM.
All right, David, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, you have a new field guide out for OmniFocus 4.
Yeah.
You have, I know you've been working hard on this. I've been through much of it. As always, it's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about the guide, and then I want to get into some OmniFocus stuff.
Yeah, sure. So it's 90 plus videos, 7+ hours. So, when I make these, I don't have a target in mind of, I want to make it this many videos or this long, but I just try to cover it thoroughly. And then whatever we have at the end is how long it is. There are, like I've done with several of the recent ones, there's a standard version that gets you the 90 videos in 7 hours, but there's a plus version where we're going to have a webinar series. And one of the things I realized making this is just how much my thoughts about task management and OmniFocus have changed over the years. Like if I look at the advice I gave in the first version of this thing so many years ago, I wouldn't give that advice anymore. I feel like I have a better handle on how to manage tasks without having them take over your life now. So this one in a lot of ways pairs nicely with the productivity field guide because it kind of picks up and is a little practical on a lot of the concepts I talk about in productivity. But it was really fun making it. Production-wise, it's probably the best one I've ever made. They just get better, right? Bringing JF on was a huge benefit. He's a really good editor, so there's tons of little touches in the edit that weren't done by me in the past, and I feel like I've gotten better at explaining this stuff. And It's just, it was a real joy to make it. So that's the course. You can get it, go to learn.maxsparky.com, and they're both there. And there's like a 45-minute sample. Because there's so much stuff there, I give away long samples. And so you'll know at the end of 45 minutes if I can help you or not. It's the basic stuff. The more advanced stuff is in the course. But, I've been on a journey with this app. As much as I talk about applications on the show and like to try different things, I've been using OmniFocus since before it was OmniFocus. I started when it was Ethan Schoonover's Kinkless GTD.
Yeah.
And it's been my primary task manager for 15 years. So that's a long time with one app.
It is a long time. And going through this and downloaded the trial for OmniFocus 4 and using it with kind of going along with the guide, I was struck by how much this app has evolved and changed. So not only has your take on these things changed, the app itself has been for a long time, and they've kept up with the times, I think, in a lot of ways. I do have a kind of a big question about OmniFocus 4, though. They kind of famously went in on Swift and Swift UI, and this app came out, I think, much later than they originally talked about and anticipated. And
yeah,
I would imagine that a good bit of that has to do with Swift and Swift UI, and using it feels very modern. And it's not. Don't hear I'm not saying like it's fantastic, but do you think that was the right call for them to do?
yeah. I think it was because, whether it took them 2 years or 1 year to get Swift UI implemented, the big benefit they were going for has already paid off. Like, OmniFocus has a native app on Vision OS. Reminders does not. OmniFocus has already been adding new features since this Vision 4 came out with the point updates, and every feature shows up on every platform simultaneously. They've built an app entirely on Switch UI, and they were the canary in the coal mine for Apple. I feel like Apple should have underwritten this development, frankly, because I feel like the Omni team, which is, some of the best Mac programmers on the planet, they found all of the problems with Swift UI, and they had to go back and forth with Apple to get them fixed. Swift UI is a lot better because Omni did this, so that's not a good reason for Omni to do it, because their job isn't to help Apple. But I do think that the benefit of doing this is that now they've got a solid foundation, and it's 100% Mac app, and it gets new features like there's no other way you could have done it if you didn't go all in with Swift UI. So they're getting the payoff now, and they paid the price in the delay. So I think overall they're in a great position now, but it was hard. And like one thing about OmniFocus, like I said, I really have evolved my thinking on tasks and generally on this app and specifically. Mm-hmm. When it first started, back 15 years ago, it was really 100% a David Allen getting things done implementation tool. They use the same language, they use the same features. Everything really was right down the line with kind of getting things done, but I don't use getting things done anymore. And I don't use most of it anymore. But this app has got to the point where whatever system you want, it really has what you need. I think the downside with it, because I looked at jumping ship off of OmniFocus a few times in the last couple of years since I stopped being a lawyer, but I always came back, is it just really is flexible. So like if you want a tag-based system, if you want, a calendar-based system, if you want a GTD system, whatever it is you want, you can kind of roll your own with it. You've just got to kind of get over the hump of understanding it, which is why I make the guide.
Yeah, one of those changes is the move. It's sort of a twofold move. The downplaying of the inspector.
Yeah.
While at the same time, this outline view kind of becomes more important. And I played with the OmniFocus betas, before this came out, and I had a hard time wrapping my head around it. And they made a lot of progress with that in the betas. And I think the way you explain it in the field guides is really good. But could you give an overview of kind of what that shift means and how to think about this outline view in the app?
Yeah. So historically, the outline view was very defined and it's always been there. So if you think of the task manager, like on the left side, you've got a list of projects. The middle window is the tasks associated with the selected project, and the right side is the inspector. This is a very common setup for Mac apps, and OmniFocus has been on there since day one. Now, version 4 still has those elements, and that center of that list they call the outline. It still has an inspector and an outline, but historically, if you wanted to do pretty much anything to an individual task, you had to go over to the inspector and click on, the defer date or the flag or the tag or whatever, the estimated time, whatever property you wanted to adjust, you did in the inspector. And they wanted it to be more organic. So now you can turn on any property you want in the outline view. And as you go through it, you can make changes to things right in the outline. So as a result, I rarely have the inspector up anymore, and the view gets simpler. And one of the tricky things they did, but this is why you kind of need to kind of learn the app. Like they put keyboard shortcuts on all those properties. Like the defer date is one I use once in a while. It's Shift D. So if you've got anything selected in the outline, you hit Shift D. You can just type Shift D, and then type 2D, and that would be 2 days from now, and it moves the defer date out 2 days. There's just no way to do that faster in any other application. Like I played with reminders, like changing the date on a thing, you've got to jump through all these hoops. With OmniFocus, it's very streamlined once you kind of learn how it works. But yeah, that's a big change. The outline view is way more powerful, and you can display those properties or not display them. And you can really customize it to the things you like. Like for instance, the estimated time of a task. A lot of people don't use that, so you can just turn it off and you never see it again.
That's one thing I appreciate about the OmniFocus UI is that people can customize it, right? Like if you don't use defer dates, you can basically kind of banish them from the app.
Yeah.
Or if
Yeah.
you don't use tags or flags, like you can, not only can you ignore them, but you can actively hide a lot of those things. And that is awesome because people are very picky about their task manager apps, right? Like I rejected reminders this past time because the inspector on the Mac was too fiddly. Now I'm going to try it again this summer, and maybe they've improved it. People want these apps almost more than any other app category, I think, to really be tuned for how they want to work. And OmniFocus has always been good, but I think is even better now at giving people the options they want and kind of adapting itself to the user. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that a big thing, the reason people get annoyed with task apps is think about why you go to a task app. It's to actually check things off, to get things done. So I think you're acutely aware of wasted time when you're in a task app because all it is lists. I was actually thinking about my whole kind of like outlook towards task apps. Because I've been making all these videos and I'm planning this big webinar series. So I want to really kind of get advanced in the webinar series. But personally, like to me, when I was young, nobody used the word tasks. Everybody had to-do lists,
Sure.
Right? And if you go back to like even like kind of my productivity origin story back to Hiram Smith and guys like Stephen Covey, they were talking about to-dos back then. And it wasn't really until getting things done that the word tasks kind of got kind of in the lexicon. And it was way more common that referred to them as tasks. And I felt like that was more intentional. And so I feel like for a long time I referred to them as tasks. I still do on occasion. But the more I think about it, to me at this point, they're lists. They're not really tasks. They're just lists of things I can do. And if you look at your, quote unquote task manager app, it's going to have a ton of things in it. But like I've said a lot on the show and in the productivity field guide, tasks are infinite, time is finite. The real trick with a task manager is finding a way to keep the list where you can dip into them and work on them, but not feel like it's a weight around your neck. And, that's at the healthy relationship with tasks. You have a calendar, You pick time to work on a project. You go into the lists, and you do as many things as you can during the time you've given it, and then you move on to the next thing. And that's how you get through your life. And in the past, my relationship with task managers was a little unhealthy. I felt like, kind of like to summarize, it was more of a master than a partner. And so now the way I use OmniFocus is more as a partner. And I think of them more as lists. But, I love this app because it adapted to my own change of philosophy, and it's still probably the best tool. So that's why I made it. I'm proud of it. If you're interested in OmniFocus, go check out the free sample. If you want to go deep, get the one with the webinar. If you just want to kind of learn the app, then you can go with the basic one. There's a discount called OF for lunch, all caps, to get you 10% off. That's only good for a week after this show publishes. So take advantage of that. That gets you 10% off. And man, I'm proud of it. It came out good.
No, it's great, and it looks awesome. I did have one question about the production.
Sure.
Well, a comment and a question. First of all, every time I see one of your videos, I'm like, dang it, I need a Vesta board so bad.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah,
it's so
use it
cool in the
again.
background.
Yeah.
So good. I did also have the thought of like, when y'all are scrubbing through footage, I bet it also makes it easier to know where you're scrubbing because the title of the thing is in the background. Like,
Yeah.
That's a real producer kind of trick that I thought of. But you have sections on the Vision OS version of OmniFocus. And there's not many task managers on Vision OS. I think it's basically OmniFocus and things. Like Todoist isn't there. Reminders is the iPad version for some reason I don't understand. But you have Vision OS footage in this, and I know from my work on Widgetsmith, getting images and video out of Vision OS can be extremely difficult. And so what was that process like?
Hellish is, I think, the short answer. I shot that video so many times, and I would think that my head was still. I even thought at one point about like going out into the shop and like clamping the headset into something and like just like sliding my head into it to keep it still. I mean, I was looking at all these weird things, but the problem is when you're in the device, it corrects for motion, but when you get the video out of it, it doesn't. So it looks like you're a drunken sailor when you when you look at the video. And like some of them got so bad that we tried so many different things that we ended up just using screenshots. Like I would take screenshots and narrate through them. But yeah, that problem is not solved yet. At least not for me.
Yeah. I was thinking like, would the developer strap help with that? I'm not sure that it would. And if it's like when we're working on the Widgetsmith stuff, I can run the simulator, right? Because I can download the code and build the app just on my local computer, but you can't do that when it's not your app. And that is something I hope Apple addresses and to make this easier, because people are making content with this thing and it needs to be simpler.
Yeah, it does. Or there's like a stability mode or something. I don't know. They need to think about it. But yeah, it's pretty bad.
Another question that I had was about the notes field in OmniFocus. You said something that really jumped out at me when talking about this field, that it's a great way to apply contextual computing to OmniFocus. What did you mean by that? And what are some ways that can be useful?
Well, I mean, OmniFocus is very link friendly. Like the idea of contextual computing is that you can jump to a specific point in a specific app and just keep your mind on the job at hand. And so anything in OmniFocus can pretty much be turned into a link, a project, an individual task, a perspective. So that is very contextual computing friendly. So like if you've got an Apple Note that you're keeping notes on a project, but you want to do the task in OmniFocus, you can just put a link in the note. You click one button, it takes you right there in OmniFocus. But I also use the notes field in Omni, because OmniFocus has a notes field for projects and tasks, and I usually do it at the project level. Or I'll put a link to the specific Apple Note or the Obsidian document or the Devon Think, whatever, a real big condition for me on apps that kind of make it into my daily driver are the ability to have linked specific references, and OmniFocus often for me is kind of like ground zero of that, where I just put all the links in that notes field and then I can jump anywhere I want. Like if I've got a project for this podcast episode, I'll have a link to the specific Notion page where we do the outline, so everything just kind of ties together.
Have absolutely loved doing that with MimeStream. They recently added the ability to link to a MimeStream message, and it's just like under a right click. So unlike Mail, where you got to do the Apple script thing, it's just right there. And I find it so useful to like, hey, I'm looking at a task that's related to an email. Click the link, it goes to that email, or having it referenced in a note. Like everything, we talked about this so much, everything in macOS should be linkable. And so you can put them anywhere. But I do agree with your philosophy that a notes field in a task should not be 2 paragraphs about what the task is. Like sometimes you just need a little reminder, but I find it much more useful to like have a URL there to something else.
Yeah, I don't really use the notes field with individual tasks, but on a project basis, I'll have links in it. That's basically all I really put in. And then I keep that stuff elsewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely the way to go. Anything else with OmniFocus 4 we should touch on?
I think it's a great app, even if you're not interested in the field guide and you're looking for a good task manager. I think that's the one still. And what I said earlier, I mean, you can really bend this app to your will. So take a look. One other thing that really changed with OmniFocus 4, and I put extensive coverage of this in the field guide, is the automation story is much improved over OmniFocus 3. The big benefit, I think, and I don't know if this is all true. I mean, there's a lot of smart people at the Omni Group, but they brought Sal Segoyan on board after he left Apple, and they've got like their own kind of flavor of OmniScript or Omni Group JavaScript, basically. And Sal has got that automating Omni website that he has, and there's like hundreds of new features added to this app just through scripting that he made that you can just download and import. I showed you how to do it in a course, and I picked a few of my favorites, or you could write your own. But it really is kind of shocking to think of the fact that this app is so scriptable that if there's a feature you don't want, you can add just with a little scripting, or just go to Sal's website and it's probably already there.
He's a mad scientist.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, the stuff he does.
So everyone should go check these out. We got links in the show notes. We have that discount code. If you have not checked out OmniFocus in a long time, or you've upgraded to 4, this is a great resource. And again, congratulations.
Thanks.
This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate is not to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. It's the matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates quickly. So ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Hiring the right person for the right position is critical in a growing business. It can be really difficult. I've done a lot of hiring in my career, and Indeed makes it much easier and simpler because they have all of these tools to make sure that you get a right fit. Indeed leverages over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. So Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than the 3.5 million businesses worldwide who use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Just go to Indeed.com/MPU. That's Indeed, INDEED. Indeed.com/MPU to support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/MPU. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Our thanks to Indeed for the support of the show and Relay FM.
Steven, things we're playing with. I thought it'd be interesting to check in with you on your 11-inch iPad.
Yeah, so I picked up the M4 11-inch. I did the 512 gig with cellular. I'm a big believer in cellular iPads. Please, Apple, bring it to the Mac. And I did the white Magic Keyboard, and I've really enjoyed my time with it. I've been primarily an iPad mini user for the last couple of years since it got its refresh. And going to a bigger iPad, it felt enormous at first, but it's been really nice. There have been many times where I can just take it with the keyboard case and, go to a meeting and take some notes, or if I'm just going to do some social media stuff at night, having the keyboard is great. I will say that the thinness and lightness matters less if you have it in the keyboard case. But the second you take it out of the keyboard case, you realize oh goodness, Apple's done a lot of work here.
So how's typing on the keyboard? Some people complain the 11 is too cramped. Do you have any problems?
It's no more cramped than the previous 11-inch versions. For me, it's fine. I wouldn't want to write a novel on it, but it's more than good enough for working in Notion or in Mail or Slack or something like that. If I have to have a complaint about the keyboard, it's that it's pretty back heavy, and the aluminum kind of spine of it where the USB-C port is not as tall as it could be. So the thing kind of wants to rock back. And if you're on a bed or on a couch, it will basically topple over backwards. If you're on a desk or a table, it's fine. But the stability is a little bit lacking. And I don't know if that's better or worse on the 13, but on the 11 at least, it's not hard to topple the thing over, which I don't love.
I can tell you that it's worse on the 13.
Okay.
Yeah, because I tested them both.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
Yeah. It's nice, though. I mean, it doesn't cover the function key row, which was my concern, but it is just on the hairy edge of being balanced. So there's something that could improve.
I don't understand why that's an issue. I know that they kind of brought things back some because they added the function row, which I absolutely love, even though there's no hardware keys to adjust the keyboard brightness at this point. But it seems like, okay, you're making this a laptop replacement. My MacBook Pro doesn't flop over. Now I understand the computer's on the top half instead of the bottom half, with a Mac, but it's pretty frustrating at times. If I was like this weekend, my wife and I watched a movie on the iPad, and it's I kind of put a pillow behind it because it kept falling over.
Yeah. What kind of work are you doing on it?
It has been mostly meeting notes and things in Notion. Actually, I moved some of my extracurricular things into Notion recently, and it's not a lot of research or show prep. It's light work. I mean, I came to the same conclusion you did a couple years ago. It's the iPad is going to be good what it's good for, and I don't want to deal with pushing it. I have a laptop if I need more, but like tonight, for instance, I've got a board meeting I'm going to for an organization I work with, and I'll have the Google Doc of our docket, and I can send emails or record tasks as I need to. That sort of stuff is great, but I'm not giving up my MacBook Pro anytime soon.
Now you just got to get your board on Notion so you don't have to deal with Google.
I know. I should make that happen. I've told you, additional parts of my life keep coming into Notion. It's really kind of getting out of hand, but that's okay. But yeah, overall, I'm happy with it. I do miss the compactness of the Mini, especially when I'm just going to sit down and read something. But the bigger size is more flexible with these other tasks, and if you have it out of the case, you can really tell how much thinner it is.
Well, I've been on a journey.
Yeah. So I'm scrolling through iMessage. You sent me a text a week ago, and you said, also, I bought a new computer today. And then you tried to make me guess. And I couldn't
Yeah.
guess. I guessed a Copilot Plus PC. I guessed an iPad. I guessed a Nextcube. I was wrong. What did you end up with?
It's complicated. All right, let me wind back a little bit. Okay, so when last we spoke, I bought a 13-inch iPad Pro, and that tipsy problem was really kind of annoying. And I found myself I hadn't used a 13-inch, like as a daily driver for a while, but that's the only iPad I had, and so I was using it, and it really just wasn't the right fit for me. I just I had reasons for getting it, thinking, well, sheet music will look better on 13-inch, but I can print sheet music. But I just, because I try to use an iPad kind of as Apple demonstrates them, and I don't really go much beyond that, the 13-inch was kind of more iPad than I needed. And it was, I just couldn't seem to get comfortable with that device. And I was creeping up on the 2-week deadline.
Okay.
And I had thrown away the boxes. Or recycled the boxes. I felt like, that was the iPad for me when I bought it. I was all set. But as the 2 weeks was inching forward, I realized, I just don't use this the way a 13-inch user, like I'm not Federico. I don't need a 13-inch iPad. And so on the 13th day, I went back to Apple and I said, hey, I don't have the boxes, but I'd like to just trade down to an 11-inch. And they said, that's no problem, so long as it's in good shape and everything. I didn't know if that was a problem or not, but yeah. So I traded the whole rig in, and I had the keyboard and I had the non-keyboard cover, because I think that I often use the iPad without the keyboard. It's not like my main, I don't really treat it like a laptop. So the keyboard I use on occasion, like sometimes I'll go to Disneyland and work in Batu and have the keyboard for that, but I don't use it every day. So they were really cool about it, and I got a bunch of credit back. And then I also had credit on my Apple account from some other stuff I'd traded in the past. And so I had $700 in there. And while I was in the store, as you do, this really wasn't completely accidental. I've been thinking about it a lot.
Uh-huh.
So I have, as you know, a Mac Studio that I do the bulk of my work on.
For almost a year now, right? It's been...
Yeah, and I'm going to have this for a while. I'm not thinking about replacing it. It's super powerful for what I do. The OmniFocus for Field Guide was all rendered there. It's no problem. And I also have a 13-inch MacBook Air that I carry around, and when I go out of town, I take it with me. And I don't know if it's a middle-aged thing or what, but I just am getting increasingly annoyed by the amount of screen real estate on the 13-inch. It's just not enough for me.
Okay.
And for the type of work I do, it just always seems like I'm too cramped on space. And even with the 13-inch iPad, I was thinking, well, this is still not enough screen real estate for me to do the job. So where I took so in this Apple visit, not only did I trade my iPad down to the 11-inch, I gave them my M2 13-inch MacBook Air and walked out with a 15-inch M3 MacBook Air.
Okay, so you went down a size on the iPad Pro and up a size on the MacBook Air.
Yeah, I used up my credit with Apple, but it wasn't that. It was about $700 to do it after trade-in, and I got one with 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I paid extra. But I just, I'm very happy with this. I think I needed a 15-inch laptop. I just want more screen real estate. It wasn't about the performance. The M2 was fine. Yeah. Performance-wise. It was just the M3 is what they now have. So I got a nice update in screen real estate. And I didn't really expect this year I'd be buying a new Mac after getting the Mac Studio last year, but here I am.
No, it's awesome. I think that 15-inch MacBook Air is sweet. I've have now recommended that to several people who, are mostly replacing an old MacBook Air. And it's if you want a little more screen real estate, but still a really thin and light laptop, the 15-inch is now an option. And it starts at $1,299, so it's $200 more than the M3 13-inch. I think if you're looking for a 13-inch, the M2 is totally fine. Like you said, The performance is great. You happen to get an M3 because that's what they have now. But there's something kind of special about that 15-inch size in the Air, because it's been really since the 12 and 14-inch iBook days that there's been a larger consumer notebook, and the MacBook Air, to call it a consumer notebook, is really underselling it. I mean, it is very powerful, and it sounds like you've made the right call.
Yeah, well, I just wanted something because a lot of my workflows are 2 apps on the screen at once,
Yeah.
and 13 inches is just not enough room for that. At least not for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had it now almost a week, and I love it, and I think I made the right decision. And but it was fun teasing you because I knew you wouldn't have any idea what I did.
Yeah, no, I did not. What finish did you get? What color?
I got the fingerprint model. The
Midnight?
The midnight. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, let's just see how it goes. It's fine.
Yeah. I know Mike Hurley loves the Midnight.
I actually talked to Mike because Mike and I were together a few weeks ago, and I told him I was thinking about upgrading it. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you should. That's a great." So it didn't come on a whim. I'd been thinking about it for a while, but the yeah, it's a nice computer, and if you want more screen real estate, there's an option now. There's no way I would have bought a MacBook Pro for more screen real estate, but now that they've got this option available, I'm not sure why I didn't get the 15-inch. I guess when I bought the 13-inch, they didn't have the 15-inch yet. But
yeah, because it came out later.
Yeah, but I really do. I like this computer and recommend it. So I set it up from scratch because I haven't done that for a while. And it's still slowly kind of getting built out, going on a little trip in a few weeks. And this will be great to bring with me. If anything comes up that I need to manage, it'll be just right for that. And I'm still enjoying the 2-computer lifestyle. So I thought maybe I'd turn it on you. Now you're a year or 2 in. I forget, when did you make the switch to just one Mac?
About a year and a half ago, because I bought the M2 Pro, MacBook Pro, which was for sale for 9 months.
Yeah, so for listeners who aren't up, Stephen had 2. He had a desktop and a laptop. He sold them both, bought a really souped up laptop, which he keeps docked on his desk most of the day. The advantage, of course, is he doesn't have 2 computers to manage. Like just the other day, I went on the new one. I had to do something, and Keyboard Maestro macros weren't synced. I had to take care of that. Yeah. You don't have to do any of that stuff when you just have one computer. And so that was Steven's idea, is just go all in on a really, tricked out laptop and use it for both things. Year and a half. Are you happy with that decision?
I am. I love having all of my stuff just on one computer. We just talked about the 11-inch iPad Pro. That, in a small way, is kind of taking the second laptop role that I haven't really had. Before the iPad Pro, I would take my MacBook Pro to these meetings and things that I do outside of work. But the iPad Pro has eaten away a little bit of that. But it really is nice just have all my stuff on one machine. I'm going to California for WWDC, and I have actually quite a bit of editing to do on a side project, a podcast that I'm helping produce for our church. And I was like, well, I'm going to be in a plane for 6 hours, got to fly all the way across the country. That'll be a great time to get some editing done. I don't have to worry about all the assets are on my desktop. I need to make sure I can move them to my laptop. Is there enough space? Is Logic set up the way I want it to? It's it's already on my computer. I can just take my computer. And that's been fantastic. I really don't see me going back to a desktop and a separate laptop anytime soon. And in fact, I've already kind of thought that when the M4 Pro and Max come out, probably later this year, maybe, or early next year, that may be the time I upgrade this MacBook Pro. And I think I would stay with the 14-inch, although the 16-inch, I know it's a lot bigger, but I have a little bit of that feeling you did. It'd be really nice to have a little more screen real estate. I don't know about that yet, but I think I will probably go from the M2 to the M4 whenever that happens. But yeah, I think my days of having 2 computers, which I did for a long time, in that history, I did that basically since I quit my job, now almost 9 years ago. I had a couple of iMacs, had the Mac Pro, had the Mac Studio, and that's how I operated for a long, long time. And with the move to Apple Silicon, it made having just one computer, having a notebook really possible for me for the first time. I had tried the single MacBook Pro thing, and there were issues with sound and heat on Intel, and then they were just bad for so long, like with the keyboards and everything, the touch bar and everything. But it's really in a sweet spot now. So I think I'm going to stay put on the one computer life, and and just kind of upgrade every few years.
Yeah, and the other thing is plug and play got so much easier with the Apple Silicon, where it reliably connects to the monitor, but it also disconnects easily. So that whole thing makes a lot of sense. That being said, I'm pretty happy with my 2-computer setup, and I'm not going to change. I don't see upgrading. I have my Mac Studio's M2. I'm not even going to think about it till probably M5 or M6. Maybe if like something happens with artificial intelligence where you need to do an upgrade, then that's when I'll think about it. But in terms of video rendering, which is the main thing I bought this for,
yeah,
it's fine. It doesn't need an update. I'm not going to spend money until I really have a good reason for it. And I feel like the advantage of a desktop is the number of ports on the back. It's very simple, and it's just always running in the background, and I don't have to worry about it. But that's just me.
I remember when we talked about you getting the Mac Studio, and certainly when I had mine, because I had the first one, it is the perfect desktop machine for what you and I do, because it's really fast. The first one was a little noisy, but the new one, the M2, is silent basically, and it has tons of I/O, including on the front. And as someone who is importing footage and moving stuff between drives, having all of that I/O without the need of a Thunderbolt dock is really sweet. Now, I run my entire system through the CalDigit TS4, so I have one cable coming out of my laptop to the dock, and everything else on my desk, including the display, the studio display, is running through that. And that's great. Don't hear I'm not saying, but having it go all into your desktop computer without a third thing is also really nice when you are relying on something day in and day out for your job. I got kind of nervous about the TS4, and I think in the holidays last year they went on sale, because it's kind of an expensive device. And they went on sale on Amazon, and I bought one. And it's I have it on my shelf, because if that thing dies, my desk doesn't work. And that's not an acceptable situation as someone who makes a living on his Mac. And so I bought a second one. You don't kind of have those worries with the Mac Pro or the Mac Studio.
If you had to do it again today, someone said, okay, you got to buy a new one today, would you get a desktop and laptop, or just get a single laptop again?
I think I'd do a single laptop again. I really have been happy with it.
And see, if I had to choose again today, I think I'd get the desktop and the laptop.
Yeah.
I'd do whatever. So I guess it's all good, because I had a 16-inch MacBook Pro that was on my desk for 8 months and had never been undocked, because I work at the same desk all the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, either way, I downgraded my iPad to the 11-inch and upgraded my MacBook Air to the 15-inch.
Awesome.
What were your guesses again? First you thought I was going to get a Windows thing. I'm not, I'm very curious about Windows and what they've done, but I definitely don't want to use that recall feature until it's been in the wild for a while.
I thought that, and then I sort of lost track of if you had bought an iPad or not, because you were traveling the week they came out. And then I was just looking around my office, maybe you bought a Next Cube, That's the thing normal people do, right? That's just me.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to hear how what you think about the 15-inch Air over time, because it is a new form factor, new laptop. And I know that people who I've steered that direction have been really happy with it, because the 13 is a great size, but a lot of times you do need a little bit more. The difference between 13 and 15 in terms of having two documents side by side, or editing photo or video, it's a bigger difference than the number lets on, I think. And so I want to hear as you explore it more how that works out for you.
My logic on it is there's kind of two kinds of days where I take a computer out of the house. There's like a day trip,
Mhm.
where I just go to Starbucks and work or go to Disneyland and work. And for that, it's a small kit. And usually it's writing, and an iPad with a keyboard is perfectly sufficient for that. So an 11-inch actually fits in any bag that I own. And then there's the times I go like out of town for extended periods. And for those trips, the bag I take, a 15 or a 13, they're the same effectively when I travel.
Yeah.
So I think there's really not a lot of downside for me by doing it that way. And a lot of times, sometimes I just want to get out of the studio and just work in a different area of the house. And the 15-inch is good for that. So anyway, that was kind of the logic behind it. But I didn't expect to upgrade, but it's been on my mind, and it's close enough with the M2 that I got a nice trade-in value and blah, blah, blah. You know how we all justify it one way or the other.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one reason I think I'm not going to wait to the M5 generation, not because my M2 Pro isn't keeping up, but, the business owns it. There's some value in it. That value, does go down over time. And when I do that, I have an M1, a 14-inch M1 MacBook Pro that Mary is using. And so, I've got that. There's also a couple of Airs. Like, I will have something to trade in, because usually like whatever my work machine is gets passed down to somebody in the family. Like, I still own it. The business still has it, but it's just used by somebody else. And then I, trade it in or sell it kind of after that. So I'll do the same arithmetic when the time comes.
Yeah, the one reason why I don't feel compelled to upgrade the Mac Studio at M4 is this hard drive I put in. I bought the big hard drive, and I feel like I need to use it a little longer.
Yeah, I do have that going on too. My 8 terabyte SSD in my laptop.
It sure is convenient, though.
It is. I could have bought a MacBook Air for what it costs, though.
Yeah,
a whole nother computer.
Don't think about that too much.
No.
All right. We're the Mac Power Users. You can find us over at relay.fm/MPU. Thank you to our sponsors this week, 1Password, NetSuite, and Indeed. If you're curious about OmniFocus, please go check it out. You can learn more at learn.macsparky.com. Don't forget that 10% off code OF4Lunch, all one word. Get yourself 10% off. If you are a More Power User subscriber, stick around. We're going to talk about our last call on WWDC rumors, and we'll see you next time.